Welcome to Bon Mots, where we'll be applying the Manzer or mostly Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative to a binary system.
This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion is advised.
So we've watched a bunch of Oscar films recently, a goodly amount of them, and a couple of the movies we thought were going to be Oscar
The Oscars
films
have come and gone.
Yeah, and so we've watched a lot of great films. So in order to, I think as you mentioned, cleanse the palate,
It's time.
yes,
Mhm.
we've decided to do a movie that's not going to be surprising you saw in the title. Anyway, I'm Jonathan E. Manzer, here at Scott Thurlow,
And I've got the magic hands.
and Stephen Ramosi.
Manos, these hands will seal your fate.
Yes. And this is the Lost Signals Reviews, Manos. Or I should put in air quotes.
Officially.
Manos.
Manos.
The Hands of Fate. So, Steve-O, would you like to start off with our funny logline?
This movie is basically Torgo's Texas Beach Party.
Mm-hmm.
That is.
Torgo's the character you'll hear more about shortly.
It seems like a good peach party for that. So I'll tell about the plot. This is a very jazzy film in the sense that there's a lot of jazz and that it's a random compilation of
Somewhat slapdash.
Yes. Like stuff that shouldn't work together and doesn't quite, but somehow has a melody behind it. So the narrative of this is a family gets lost in Texas, as you're wont to do in horror films.
As always.
They stumble upon the master's house out in the middle of nowhere, and the caretaker, Torgo. And they end up getting involved in a lot of Manos baby mama
related
drama.
stuff.
It turns out that the master is not quite a vampire, but has all the trappings of being a vampire.
He's more like a lich, I would say.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, a lich-like being who traps women and keeps them as concubines of sorts when he awakes. However, I don't think they ever establish how long the period is.
This movie fails to establish a number of things. That is one of them.
And it ends up with the family Torgo breaks rank in attempting to find his own.
I pose a Starscream, essentially.
Yeah, he wants his own harem. The master says, nope.
No dice.
We're going to playfully beat you to death instead.
So
That does happen.
perhaps I'm wrong, but Torgo doesn't die. I don't think. He gets his hand burned off and
he
then runs
off.
away.
Yes, correct.
And the Hands of Fate are then chasing after him or something like that. And the family gets captured, and the master lives on to trap another day.
As is his wont.
Here's the thing is that it's a fairly simple story that does come full circle. It's just that the 5-minute establishing narrative and the 5-minute ending narrative makes sense, but very little in between
Correct.
causally connects.
That is true, and perhaps that's, again, like you mentioned, like the sign of the nature of how this film was made, which maybe we'll go into a little bit later. But yeah, like, for the plot-wise, I'm looking at a 1, because, like, all, I don't know, hilariousness stripped aside, at the core of it, it has the possibilities, the kernels of being a okay, like, horror tale. And, like, I do like the ending, the downer ending, and family gets trapped, and the new cycle, new generation of trapping, unwitting victims begins. Yes, I kind of like that, but as you said, everything that in between that, like, is meandering as hell. It's not fleshed out. It's just bizarrely, like, out of place. So, go on.
Here's the thing, is that you're going to this movie assuming that Mike and his family are the main driving force of this. But this is not what the
It's
movie's
set up
about.
like that, but then the movie's like, eh.
Yeah, you're watching. I think you mentioned it while we were watching the film, Steve-O. It's the minutia of what goes on
Behind the scenes.
when the camera turns away from Dracula, and it's him and his female vampires and what's the character's name? Renfield.
Renfield, yes.
Renfield are just hanging out,
dicking around.
and
Having a family
the power
squabble.
struggles going through that. And I like the film for that. So I'm actually, granted, I don't know if this was the intention of the narrative.
It absolutely was not.
But it could be.
I don't think it is. What do you think, Steve?
It could have been in a movie that was better made
Or more self-aware.
and actually put some thought into making that the point of the movie. But I think it's, at least to me, seems like that was not the point, and that was not what they were going for. I think this was supposed to be like a horror tale on almost like a Dracula level, as you mentioned Renfield, right? Like, but
it has like some certain parallels to the core
It's
Dracula.
heavily an influence on the work.
Yeah.
I think it was something that fell into the trap of not knowing why tropes work and trying to use those tropes and then using them incorrectly. And knowing a little bit about the backstory of it, I guess the guy that directed it made this movie on a bet because he said, it looks really easy to make a horror movie, I'm just going to do it.
He wrote, directed, starred,
says
and so
something
forth
about it.
So many hats.
It is
so many hats.
It is an enjoyable movie to Mystery Science Theater, if you will, which we did.
Which Mystery Science Theater itself did. Which is, like, before you go on, sorry, this movie is probably more well known because they did it.
Almost
versus
definitely,
than it itself.
Oh, most definitely.
So
yeah.
we somewhat did it ourselves, even though it's been a while since I've seen the actual MST. So I don't remember this film very well at all, even from that. So we sort of did go with it with fresh eyes and having MST 3 it ourselves.
I will say that there's an interesting amount of time spent on Torgo, and I kind of see why. Like, I think perhaps the director and writer and whatever started writing this and was like, "Hey, I am more interested in knowing what happens with this character than anybody else, so I'm just going to put him in this a bunch." And then,
or it was accidental incompetence.
Perhaps.
We'll never know.
Regardless, I don't... One is definitely as high as I go on this. I'm leaning towards a 0 for plot.
That's fair.
It has the bookends, though. It has all of the... Here's the thing is that you can berate this for the lack of style, for the fact that the mouths don't match the dialogue, the random placement, but... It is at its core a functional story.
I'm going to agree with that. That's why I'm giving it a 1 itself. And as you mentioned, I'm agreeing with the bookend aspect of it. Yeah, it's a simple story. It could have been handled better. They could have understood the tropes they were using and so forth better, Steve-O, for sure. But I'm going to give it a soft 1 because it did bookend itself. It wasn't incomprehensible. It was just poorly handled. So...
I think
that's how I stand.
I think that I think I'm gonna give you this one. I'm gonna give it a 1 because it is at its heart.
You can see the kernel
an actual
of the story.
story.
Exactly.
An actual story.
Exactly.
You see where it starts and you see where it ends off, and it's this nice like horror ending. Yeah.
Right.
All right, I'll give it a 1. Just for actually probably just for the ending. The intro of this can go to hell for all I care. But like,
okay.
Let me ask you a question before we get off of plot. What was the point of the cops and the making out teenagers?
Because it was the
tropes.
Yes.
Misuse of tropes.
Yes. Seriously, that's what it was. Like that, you've seen that thing in like almost all horror films. So the writer, director, actor, etc. was like, well, we have to use this. We have to put it in the film. Mm-hmm. Except he didn't know how to use it, what to do with it. But it's there because it's sort of like you expect it to be there.
Sure.
Now, if it was done in a proper film, the cops would have gone to one of two paths. Either the cops came in to save them.
Exactly.
Or it would have proven that they were trapped in some kind of occult, like they would have arrived, maybe seen their car abandoned, but no house there.
Yeah.
And like that would have, like both of those fit in. I think that they were going for the latter, but they didn't reach either of those.
They didn't have enough time. They had to return their equipment as we researched.
Yes,
they
that's
couldn't.
true.
They couldn't tie it all together, man.
I kind of like the additional part that I threw onto it. It was just like, basically, they're like any couple that wanders in here, it's almost a Twilight Zone thing. Like they're trapped in this purgatory, and the cops and the making out teenagers are just part of the experience, right? And they're just like they're also trapped there, and they're playing their part in the whole thing, which makes me like it a little bit more. I don't think that's at all what was intended.
absolutely
What
wasn't
happened was
intentional.
he got pulled over. That first shot is just him getting pulled over. He's like, "Hey, I'll put you in the movie if you don't write me a ticket."
Exactly.
And
Give me a break here,
Yeah,
cops.
we made that joke. But like at the end of the day, I think it seems like you're going to agree with us that it deserves at least a very soft 1 and not like an outright 0.
I'm gonna give it a 1. We shouldn't talk about it anymore. I might go back to a 0.
Yeah.
So
All right.
let's cut it off there.
All right.
So, speaking of giving things a 0, Steve-O, talk about themes.
I think this was
Isn't it
Scott.
me?
Oh, no. Yes, I'm sorry.
I believe it's me. We're trapped in
Apologize.
Manos' cult itself. Yes, themes, as you alluded to. Thank you. As you alluded to, I'm going to give it a 0. I'm not sure what the theme of this film is, other than the fact that this guy proved he could make a film on a shoestring budget, doing all the parts himself, and so forth. Yeah, like don't go into the weird outskirts of Texas and find yourself trapped in the cult and make stupid decisions. I don't know. I honestly don't know what this movie's trying to say. I don't think he knew. I think he just, as I said, the cynical backstory is, yeah, I can fucking make a horror movie. Watch me. Here, I'm going to do it. So, given that, that's my opening argument. You guys got anything? Go for it.
Here's one of my biggest problems with this in terms of theme is like the family makes terrible decisions against the wife's wishes. By the way, she's the smartest person in this movie.
Yes.
But the family as a whole, as a unit, makes terrible decisions, but they don't matter at all. None of the decisions that any of them make matter in the slightest, as far as I can tell, because
You're right.
it seems as though there's no actual escape. So whether or not they decide to stay here or leave, it doesn't fucking matter. There's no difference. And like,
Can't fight fate, man. Especially the hands of fate.
yeah, but maybe
They were literally
there should have been something about how you should try to fight fate, right? Like the idea is that fate brought them here. I think that's the idea of the theme, right? That fate brought them to this place, and that fate is why they are trapped there
Maybe.
forever. And like, I think that's the vague idea of what's going on here, but it doesn't play at all. And I mean, that's all I really have to
Right.
say.
No, again, completely mishandled. So
Well, to go to the words of wisdom
You got something?
of Ice Cube. Pimping ain't easy, but it's necessary. So Manos chasing women like Dom chases Jerry.
I guess.
Here's the thing: is you get to see what life is like having a.
An undead harem.
Yes, I know it's a really much more of a headache.
Are they undead? I'm
No,
not sure
no,
if they're. I think they're alive because they can be killed.
It
right?
implies they're
Like,
in stasis or something.
The idea is that they
doesn't
can be
really
killed.
matter.
Well, they're not immortal, but they are permanent.
right.
Because he does say he's permanent quite a bit.
Again, the movie's unclear about
So-
it.
Doesn't make any
No,
good sense.
Yes. So you're saying having an undead harem or having
No,
a
that's not-
mystical harem, it ain't all cracked out to
I
be.
think that he just thought that would be a funny twist. I don't think he was trying to say. Again, here's the problem I have is that, as we mentioned, that this is based off of a vampire tales.
Mythos, yeah.
And generally, those have really deep messages behind them.
Or somewhat deep, at least.
Oh, but
Much deeper than this.
Bram
They have
Stoker's
something
Dracula
to
was
say.
in economic treaties.
Right.
Like a lot of the better ones have like great themes behind them. This one just took the trappings of it, as we mentioned,
Exactly, yeah.
and without any of the substance. Sorry.
Again, no, like I said, I think it's somebody that doesn't understand why
Why or how these
what-
movies work.
what these
Yeah.
movies say and why they work, and was like, I can make a horror movie. It's easy. And you know what? Good for him, because he probably made a bunch of money after Mystery Science Theater picked it up.
Maybe. But either way, the film itself has zero theme, or whatever it's trying to say completely falls flat and by the wayside, so
Yep.
hard 0. A hand of 0.
Again, this time I'll get it correct. Steven, right?
Yes. That's my name.
antagonist.
He mispronounces my name all the time. I guess it's the guy,
The master?
the master, not Manos, right? Because Manos is the god.
Yeah. Manos is their...
Theoretically. I'm sorry, Manos. Manos is the god. I guess it's him, or possibly. No, that's it.
The movie wants you to think it's him.
And he's very flamboyant and like loves his tablecloth that's draped over
His
him.
cape is fucking amazing. You gotta see it.
It
His
is.
mustache is
I'll definitely
equally
post a
amazing.
picture of that. But like, he's got the trappings of a villain. Again, he's got the trappings of a villain. But was I ever like concerned about anybody because of him? Not really. Like, did he do a good job making Manos a force to be feared? Not really.
If anything, he made Manos seem like pretty powerless.
Manos must be so pissed off about this movie. I'm sorry, Manos must be so pissed off about this movie.
He chose the wrong avatar, man. For sure. I mean, yeah, like I don't much more to add because of the nature of like this entire the way this movie was pulled off at large generally. That like, yeah, of course it wants you to think he's the villain, but I guess his worst like egregious act was being a peeping Tom at some point. I'm like more or less.
The picture of him like the window shade flies up and it's his face there looking in at what's her name,
Margaret,
Margaret Maggie or whatever,
wife,
in her under things. You know, like sleeping with their child. Yes, it's a like she has her slip.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, he didn't do shit. Again, his motivations were like, I guess, bare bones. But again,
he just wants more wives, man. He can't get enough wives.
Sure, and like that's maybe a problem. But like as an antagonist, he was completely ineffective and unbelievable. Like I mean, like I didn't buy into it at all. And
yeah.
This movie's not going to get a good score because it just mishandles so many things. This being one of them.
Everyone should get his robe or his clothing though.
I'm gonna get that shit.
Everyone should have.
I'm gonna wear it the next horror.
I'm gonna wear that to sleep every night.
Right. Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. What he gets a 1 for his costume design, but 0 for actual antagonist.
Exactly.
You brought up his motivations. I kind of understand what they are. He has to sacrifice certain, like, whoever stumbles upon his grounds. If they're female, he keeps as a wife.
Adds to his
if
harem.
if it's male, he sacrifices. I don't know much about Manos. I don't know much about
their creed was poorly fleshed out as well.
Like the message, and again, the fact that the wives all bickered, like, and the fact that his first wife, is just calling him out constantly for being like, we don't even know if he kills Torgo. We just see Torgo run off into the woods. Like, I don't know. He seems to be lucky so far. He needs a competent protagonist, and he goes down like that. He needs like Ash.
A protagonist or an antagonist?
No, he needs a protagonist to fight.
Yeah.
Like Ash.
He'd get his ass murdered by Ash.
Yeah. Ash would fuck him up. Done with it, pretty much. He's like nice pajamas, Nancy boy. And
I'm just gonna randomly say this because I don't know where else I could put this in this episode, but the only time a gun there's a gun that's brandished throughout the movie.
That is true.
The only time it's fired is a snake is like, rattling or something in the desert,
That was
and the
far more
father
frightening.
shoots this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the snake was the antagonist.
Movie. Snake 1 for sure. No, I'm giving Manos a 0. The Master a 0.
Yeah. Manos didn't actually make an appearance, unfortunately.
Although I have to say, the master does collect fine art.
Indeed.
Of himself.
What other kind of art is there?
Exactly. I'm with you.
So I know it's my job for protagonist, but Scott, do you want this one since you had a...
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Good.
So we're told that the family are the protagonists. And
the movie sets it up.
There's an argument to be said that Maggie was her name?
Margaret
Margaret
is the wife.
Is the wife. But she's rather... Again, all the trappings of the final girl type.
What's the husband, Mike?
Michael and
spends about half this movie asleep.
Yeah.
Or gone from any scene. Again,
or being incompetent somewhere.
Yeah,
he has a gun and just waves it around. But you were afraid he was going to shoot one of his daughter at that one point.
I was wrong. The gun does get fired again to no effect at later on in the movie.
Indeed.
So I'm going to put forth the argument, and this goes back to my original theory of plot, that Torgo is the actual protagonist. He has by far the most screen time.
Or at least as equal, if not more than anyone else.
Or at least he has the most action within his screen time.
Sure. Correct.
His motivations are the strongest, and he's the most developed character.
Correct. On both fronts.
He's actually sympathetic to a certain...
Somewhat.
He has his moments of creep, granted, yeah, but everyone in this does.
He's a Redfield, so we can't help it.
He's all creep. He's only creep. That's his entire character
And he's
trait.
got his
That's
own theme song.
strongest character trait. He does have his own theme song, which is
is
amazing.
badass. So, and the theme song is great. I mean, what I mean by badass. But and like he's actually one of the most competent characters around, and he still might be out there. So, I'm going to say Torgo, protagonist 1. Say otherwise.
No, I'm going to build on that because we came up with this theory about 20 minutes into the movie, which is only an hour and 8 minutes long or whatever it is. But I mean, like, right, like, we pointed out, like, the film spends a lot of time with him. He's the most fleshed out, at least motivationally, as you said. You get why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah, he's like the creeper Renfield, like with his little weird gait and his like off-kilter manner of speaking. However, you understand what he wants. He's jealous of the master and he wants a wife for himself, at least. He's tired of being treated like shit and having nothing and forced to be the caretaker. So he enacts his own like plot to usurp the master and gets like not sacrificed because the last thing you see of him is him running away. His hand, I believe, gets burnt off, and the master adds it to his collection of the hands of fate, whatever he does with them. Regardless, I think I like a la our Blade Runner episode, way back in the day. Yeah, I think he counts the protagonist, and as you mentioned, it seems as if Warren, whoever the guy who wrote etc., was responsible for this movie existing, seemed to somehow like zero in on him as a character, and you follow him pretty much like fairly a lot throughout. So, given that, I'm going to give him a soft but still 1 because he is the most entertaining and, again, well-rounded character versus everything else that happens to be in this film.
I do agree with all of the things that you have said about him. I don't think I can give him a 1.
All right.
I would like to put forth a somewhat jokey antagonist. The antagonist in this film is Dead Air because every character takes like a 3-second beat before they say anything in response to anything that they've been told.
We should have said that an antagonist. We're on protagonist now, my friend.
I know, but I forgot that.
Right. I'm
going back to make a joke.
Yes, I apologize.
I'm going to put that in style, though. Although you're right about that. That's true. Point.
It's just so strange. But as far as Torgo goes, I can see him as the protagonist of this film. That's fine.
You still don't think it's enough to give him a 1, though? Yeah.
I think that
I feel you.
While he does have the most characterization of anybody, I don't think that it's enough to give a 1 to him. Now, Ian, you look like you're about to try and convince me.
No.
Okay.
I was actually going to move Torgo down to supporting and give that a 1. Because I kind of convinced myself while not paying attention to you talk. Sorry.
You dick.
That he's probably not the protagonist.
He was contemplating on Manos. I mean, like, I kind of like...
Actually, Scott, you talked me out of it.
So explain your line of thought on that.
No, Scott actually, as the Starscream, as you brought up earlier, the idea of the assistant...
Spanner in the works.
Yeah, the assistant rising up against the master, getting punished. But it's not his story.
Right.
It just happens that the main character stumbled upon a much better story.
I mean, that's funny. You might have convinced me now, because, like, yeah, it was a joke thing at first, but nevertheless, it's there that he's in the film a lot, and you follow his story.
Supporting, he gets a 1.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna flip it back. You're right.
You're gonna give it a 0 for protect?
Yeah, I'm shipping Torgo back into supporting, which I'll be up next with anyways. Mm-hmm. And if we're calling Michael, I guess the head of the father of the family, like by de facto then.
Michael and Maggie, or Margaret and Debbie.
Yeah. I'm giving them a 0.
All garbage.
For sure. Especially Michael.
Yeah. And Margaret is actually the smartest character
she's
in this movie.
Yeah.
But
the most grounded
she
character,
doesn't have
but
very
nevertheless.
Much characterization and...
Or agency at that.
Yeah. Exactly. Or whatever agency she does have is completely stifled by Michael's terrible overriding of her.
Yeah.
All right, it's on to you for supporting.
All right, well, as we just alluded to, yeah, then if Torgo goes here, then he gets a 1. But also got, like, do we count the wives? Like, because they were okay? Like, they were collectively fine?
Beach party,
Yeah, but they had, like...
Beach bash where they
had, like, a Tupperware party, like, for, like, again, like, undead Mormon wives or whatever. There was also the dog, I suppose, who was kind of cool. Debbie, their daughter.
The making out couple.
Yo, I'll have them too. I'm getting to them, right? So, like, as you alluded to, there's a classic, like, teenagers, like, I guess 20-year-olds who are drinking and making out in the car, like, 5 times. It cuts to them for no reason, and the cops also show up and bust them. also to no reason, to zero relevance. So they're all fine, I guess. Like, none of them will get a 1 probably, but Torgo is getting a 1 as for everything we just said. He's by far the most important and entertaining side character.
Seemingly to me, if Torgo is a supporting character, I guess supporting is... I've never actually... We have done a ton of these episodes. We've done like 80, 90, 100, probably over 100 episodes on where we go through the month scale. And I have never actually thought about this, but seemingly to me, supporting is easier to give a 1 to than protagonist, because I am leaning towards a 1 for Torgo as supporting, but I would not give him a 1 for protagonist.
Right.
Well, that does make sense.
I guess it's because they do different things in terms of the film and things.
They're
like
there for
that.
different reasons, for a different angle.
But it's I don't know. I guess it's just interesting that I never thought about it in those terms. But
I'm sorry, before you go on, are you saying that Manos, the Hands of Fate, blew your mind only because of
Manos,
relevance to our scale?
Manos, the Hands of Fate changed the way that I thought about our
That you
scale.
look at movies. All right.
I said that on air now. I can't ever take it back.
So
I
given
think
that,
I'm gonna give it a 1 for
All right.
for Torgo. Yeah.
woo, it's all good.
Okay. Stefan. You said I mispronounce your name all the time.
He's making a Manos joke right there.
Talk about dialogue.
I refuse.
Please don't.
No, I'm not going to. No, 0. Yeah, that's it.
Uh,
It's bad. It's really bad. It's terrible dialogue.
yeah.
Actually, I do want to say one thing, and this might go into style, but this entire movie is dubbed later on, after the
They
initial
couldn't
filming.
afford sound on set.
Terrible idea. Nobody who is making a movie never do this unless you're doing it to some comedic effect.
Although, to be fair, we sometimes do it with our videos, but I think ours is even better than this.
But also,
We have
the
to- we have
written
to match up
dialogue
with
is
shit.
is
Yes.
just awful.
Yes, it's terrible. The characters literally repeat lines they say to each other, or like go back and forth saying the same line 5 times. It's all like 80% of it is exposition, and it's just flat and dry and forgettable as hell. It was the worst, one of the worst parts of this movie, and that's kind of saying a lot.
I do have something I want to say, but you go first. And then
No,
I'll-
go ahead, please.
Well,
I'm pretty much
there's
done.
one part that we mentioned as we were talking about the movie, as we were watching the movie, where Torgo starts expositioning to seemingly passed out people about like what's going on, like. You're his first wife. Like, who are you explaining this to? She knows that, and also she's asleep.
It's for the audience, dude.
Yeah, of course it's for the audience, but like,
Wait.
it's usually not that obvious that they're
Well.
just doing it for the audience.
And this one it was.
I generally just rant to myself when alone, or to unconscious people I'm around.
You tell unconscious people their place in the world.
Yeah.
You're damn right I do.
Yeah, but this is not like rehashing it.
No, there's no.
There's no redeeming qualities to the dialogue.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So 0.
Exactly.
Okay, it's on to me with style. Now this is actually a very difficult one for me
Is it? Go on.
because this has some of the worst style I've ever seen in a film. But
But you're going to say, all right, go on.
there are, first of all, the soundtrack to this is absolutely amazing.
Right. If it was in a different fucking movie.
It was great when it was in Blade Runner.
No,
Except this movie came out 20 years before Blade Runner.
Taxi Driver, when they're like that, I still swear it's a very similar song.
Because of generic jazz tunes.
Also, like
Good.
the costume design is a lot of fun. Like, here's the thing: is
It's
this
campy,
is-
yeah.
I kind of don't want to give this a 0, though I know I should, because understanding this is a really low budget film, I have to look at what they got right, and I don't know if that
Which is
outweighs
what?
what they did wrong. I just mentioned like this, I said, like. So I just want to give it one scene, which I thought was like visually really neat. And I don't know if it was an accident or not, but it's the one where he's wearing like it's when the master finally wakes up, and he outstretches his arms, and the blackness of his cloak matches the darkness behind it, and all you can see are his face and the red hands, and like that's a neat little shot there. And the problem is, like, I kind of want to give this like a handicap here. Because I thought it was, like, what it did right really well, I think. But it did so much wrong. But again, it's a very low budget, very rushed production piece. And I don't know, so convince me otherwise.
All right. I have two sort of small rants that I'll try to smash together. I see what you mean, like, but here's, again, knowing what we know and having said what we said about, like, the backstory, like, why this film was even made, it's, like, cynical as hell. Like, I bet you can make a fucking horror movie for X dollars and do it. And, like, it shows that, like, you can't just jerk it off.
Oh.
And, yes, and the scene you used, yeah, that was a cool shot. Except I guarantee you, like, that was completely accidental. They're not setting up that shot. It just happened to be as dark as the fucking thing. Sure, so it looked cool.
Half of life is luck. Like, that's the thing.
Maybe.
So.
Or happenstance, perhaps. And yeah, I'll agree with you though for sure. The soundtrack was really jazzy and like upbeat and like, but didn't belong in this film. So like,
but it was in this film. You can't punish it
you're right, like,
for doing things right because you don't like the rest of the film.
I understand that. Like, so I'm going to give it credit. Like, I'm trying to cut it up. So here's what I wrote down in terms of style. It's like a thing where like you have to see the shit. Like, it has to be seen to be believed. Like, trust me, it doesn't deserve a 1, but like in some sense you should see it, if only to see like how not to do it. Largely, by and large. So like I can see the case for either one, given how like, you know, like cynical you want to be about it. So I'll toss it to you, Steve-O.
I will say that there are 2 points of style that I give a lot of credit to in this movie. One is the soundtrack, whether or not it belongs, or whether or not it
matches
fits
is what I'm saying. Yeah,
the film. It's a really interesting soundtrack. Now I don't know if these were all like, you know, produced and written for this film, or if they were, you know, public domain
shit
things that they just grabbed and they like, you know, they were like good like jazzy numbers that they could get for free. But I did like the soundtrack, begrudgingly. I wanted to not like the soundtrack. And the other thing was the costume design was really interesting. As far as everything else for style, wasn't that great. So I'm in the same boat as you, Ian. I might like give them the benefit of the doubt, even though like it is. So let me put it this way: if this was a well-regarded movie, style would be getting a 0 for
certainly.
sure, easily. Which makes me want to give it a 0.
Here's the thing is, though, like set design, for instance. Like that, like let's take a look at the portrait of the master with his dog.
Right.
Okay. That's a really clever design that they use 100 times.
Way too many times, yeah.
And that's weird, is because set design there gets a 1, and for all the artworks there, the use of the set design gets a 0. And this is what's really
I like the way you cut it up. Yeah, I do like that angle.
You know what? I think I hate to say this, but I think I'm going to give it a 0 because the director does not know how to use the moving parts of the style. Like all the style that's going on around him. There are a couple things that people do well, and it is not well
Potential
used
is wasted,
with the direction and the cinematography of this movie.
Certainly.
So I think I'm going to give it a 0 for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, I think it's 60-40 split. Yeah, the 40% is like the soundtrack and some of the costume design you said, but more than that, more than half is badly used and poorly integrated. So I'm gonna end up with a 0.
I can't give this a 0.
Even though
it's a 60-40, you're right. Except my handicap is 25. So
fair enough.
I love it. Let's do a lot of math here, guys.
Yeah, it just bumps it up above the things that.
I got you.
So anyway, Scott, on to you for recommendation.
Another tough one. I was gonna give it an outright 0, but you know what? Maybe I'll shift what I just said. You have to see this shit. So like, instead of applying that to style, you have to see this movie just to like be amused by it, and maybe like if you've seen the MSTK thing, like try to watch it on its own and do it yourself. Because is it a good movie? No, absolutely not. But do I recommend it as a fun time to watch and maybe just, again, like see how like it can go so wrong in a certain sense or go quite wrong? Yeah. If people are like, hey, should I watch it? I'm like, you know what? You have an hour to kill. You want to be entertained and then like you might have a good conversation out of it. Yeah, sure. check it out. It's on Amazon for free. That's how we watched it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check it out on Amazon if you have Prime membership.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This movie is in the vein of like The Room and Trapped in the Closet. It is an entertaining movie, and as we do these reviews, as a reviewer, I'm going to shit on the parts of it that were bad, but overall, it's fun to watch, especially with friends. Don't watch it by yourself.
That's a good point.
That's fucking boring.
Yeah.
Watch it with friends.
At least two other people.
Watch it with
preferably.
friends and make fun of it while you're watching it, and like get entertainment out of it. And like if it did something good like that is enjoyable, then the director of this movie did a good job. Like I can't hate on him for making it the way that he made it. Like despite the fact that it's a lot of things fly in the face of like people that
know how to make films.
will say know what they're doing or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it's something that you're not gonna. It's an experience that you're gonna have any other way than watching this movie. Which a lot of films these days by directors that really know what they're doing are not that. You're gonna get a lot of like the same experience over and over again because those directors aren't trying to make something like they're standing on the shoulders of giants perhaps, and they're making something that is kind of the same. And even if it's competently done, a lot of times it's boring in that way. This film is not boring, especially if you are adding your own fun to it, I'll say. So I'm going to give it a 1 for a recommendation.
100%. So we said this before. I guess this might be one of the films that encapsulates this the most. It's better to be either like awesomely memorable in a good way or terribly bad in like a memorable way. It's worse to be mediocre. So this film is not mediocre. In fact, it's way, way worse in like overall. But that means it sort of like stands out because of that.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can enjoy it, and like especially in groups. Yeah, just have a good time with it. Check it out. It's amusing to just go through. So that's sort of like why I lean on a 1 for a recommendation.
So I was going to say, don't watch this. Watch the Mystery Science Theater 3001 and give it a 0. But then I started thinking about what you guys are saying there. I've seen a couple of the films that are on Mystery Science Theater without the commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And they're unwatchable.
Yeah.
This is watchable on its own. Granted, you might not want to sit there by yourself, as you said, but
Nevertheless.
overall, like I was entertained through most part of it. It's experimental jazz in a way. All the parts don't fit necessarily well. Some people would hate this film. Most people do. But there's a group out there who like. Here's the thing: it's like in comparison to The Room, where I felt people are laughing at like Tommy Wiseau's attempt to make a film. This is different in the sense that I'm like not laughing at the director. Some of the choices he makes, obviously, you're joking about, but it says I'm like. There's some weird, bold decision making going on here, and some slapdash like experimentation, or if you want to be cynical about it, just a rush job. But whatever it was,
it's all of them at once. But nevertheless, it adds up to something.
It adds to something that I actually enjoy watching this movie, and I'm going to give it a 1. So, everyone set for the final scores?
I believe so. I really can't say much more about
I think
Manos.
so. I am.
Manos. Hands up.
Okay, so 2 3s with Scott and Stevo, and a 4 from me.
Wowie wow wow.
Yeah, I know. With a 3.3 overall.
Yep, that's about right.
Yep.
I've got nothing.
I still enjoyed this more than a couple of the Netflix roulettes that we did.
Yeah, for sure.
Specifically one of them. Actually, quick little funny story. What was the really bad one that we watched? The Last Survivor.
Mm-hmm. Last Survivors. I believe.
The female lead from that was in a movie that was really called Columbia, I believe. That was really well reviewed this year, which I saw that and I was like, her?
Cool.
But maybe check that one out if you want. I'm going to at some point. So.
All right, so I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer here with Stephen Hermosi.
Good night.
And Scott Thurlow.
And today, recording this today is my birthday, and I will give you a quote from the film, "Man, yes, child, no." Good night.
Happy birthday, Scott.
Hi, brother Scott.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manzer. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.